Okay, here we go. Hopefully this turns out right. The notes, they'll take about, I guess, close to maybe 30 minutes. But, oh, don't whine. It's okay. All right, box and whisker. We're talking about ways to write data and talk about data. Okay? Let me just tell you right up front, box and whisker, it's a useful way to organize data, but it's not that user-friendly. It doesn't give you enough information to be really used a whole lot. Box and whisker will break your data into basically 4 chunks of information, and those 4 chunks are called quartiles. It'll give you an upper quartile amount, and then 2 chunks in the middle, which are called intraquartiles, and then the lower part, which is the lower quartile. So each of these 4 chunks makes up part of the data in a box and whisker. It does not ever find a mode. It doesn't find an average. The only thing it's really good for is the middle of stuff. It can find the middle of the upper half of your data. It can find the middle of all of your data, and it can find the middle of the lower half of your data, and that's pretty much its only true value. However, I did have a professor in college that used this to grade by, and I'll explain that to you once you understand what's happening, and you'll understand why I did not like that. Okay, so a box and whisker from this set of data over here, these are all percentages of federally owned land in 10 states. So that means I have 10 pieces of information. I should put them in order from least to greatest. Always when you're doing data, that's step 1. Order your information from least to greatest. Now we're going to try to find the middle, which they call the median of this data. Well, think about it. If I have an even number of items, as my totally unattractive 4 fingers are laying up here on the screen, boy, do I need a manicure. Is there a true middle? No, because the middle would be like right there, right? But I don't have anything right there, so how could I find the middle? I'd add these 2 together and then divide them by 2. Okay? So when you have an even number of data items, you're going to have to do that. And since I had 10 things here, I'm going to find the middle, which will be right here between the 42 and the 45. I've got 5 pieces on the left and 5 pieces on the right. I will add these 2 pieces together and then divide by 2. And you can see it here, 87 divided by 2 is going to equal 43.5. That is the median. That is a piece of information we will use when we go to draw our box and whisker. Now we have to find what they call the upper and lower quartile. Upper quartile is going to be the middle of the upper half of the numbers. All right, so if I used the number 43.5 as my middle, that doesn't include the 45, right? I had to use it to average it, but it's not included. That means the 45 and up are all numbers that are in the upper half of my data, right? I need to find the number that's in the middle of that group. What? Okay, so 52 would be considered the upper quartile number, and we will use that piece of information in our data. We also have to find the lower quartile, which is exactly the same thing, but the lower half of the data. So what number would be the middle of the lower half? A 34. And so the lower quartile is a 34. So let's talk about what we found. We found the absolute middle of our data. We found the upper half of our data, the middle of our upper half. We found the middle of our lower half, right? We found 3 middles, if there is such a thing. The only 2 pieces that are left are my extremes. The biggest number and the littlest number. Boom, we're done. So what's the biggest number? 63. What's the littlest number? 24. As long as we have all of that, we can now build our box and whisker. All right? So I always start with the biggest and littles when I'm going to draw it. I put a dot where the littlest ones, that you'll have a number line, and then put your numbers approximately where they belong. So this was a 23, or 24, sorry. This was a 24. The biggest number was a 63. So that's where those two dots represent. The absolute median is where the line is within the box. Right there. And that was a 43.5. We found that the upper quartile was the number 52. That means the edge of this box, where this dot is, would be a 52. Huh? And then the edge of where this box is would be a 34, and that's the lower quartile. You basically have, and then the box includes the upper and lower on either side. That's the box part. And then the whisker are these stems that go out from there. So the middles are all enclosed in the box shape. Does that make sense? The middle of the lowest part is one edge of your box. The middle of the upper part is the other edge of your box. And the median itself is the solid line within the box. Okay? So this would be 1 quartile, 2 quartiles, 3 quartiles, 4 quartiles. Can you see the 4 different segments now? All right. They're going to ask you about the range of the intra quartiles. Just without you knowing anything, could you kind of guess what that means? I want the range of the interquartiles. The middle 2 quartiles, yes, very good, would be the 52 to the 34. I want to know how many it is between 34 and 52. So just subtract, and I think it's 18. Somebody check me. Okay, 18 would be the range of the I think it's inter or intra. Let me double check. Okay, interquartile. You know, English is not my favorite. And so, yeah, so 52 to 34, we just subtracted to equal the 18. All right? Excuse me. Is that overly difficult? They're very straightforward. What would the range in general be of this data? And just the range in general, what would it be? The biggest number would be a 63, and the smallest would be a 24, which would give me a range of 39. So depending on what the question is, you understand how to figure out what they're talking about, right? All right. Let's see if we can build our own box and whisker from the data that's given below. And we're talking about the area in thousands of square miles of 13 of the western states. Okay, these are in thousands of square miles. Step 1, put all of this data in order from least to greatest, and then double check and make sure you haven't omitted something. So definitely count your data points, okay? So the smallest number we have here is a 71, and I have another 71. So I need 2 of them. 77, okay. Now I'm looking at 80s. I've got an 84 and then an 85, right? Okay, so an 84, 85, 90s. I've got 2 98s. 98, 98. Ooh, 104. 104. Then 111, 114, 122, 147, and 164. Boom. All right. I'm just going to count. There were supposed to be 13 items. I'm double checking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perfect. Okay. So let's label everything we know. I personally feel that the upper and lower extremes, I get those out of the way because I don't even have to think on those. Biggest and littlest, boom, we're done, right? So the lowest extreme is going to be a 71. The upper extreme is going to be a 164. For the smallest number, biggest number. Extreme. Think of extreme ends of the earth. The extreme ends of your number line. Okay. Now, the median. Okay, if there were 13 items, we should have a for real middle. Is it the first 98 or the second 98? It will matter. Okay, so this 98 right here represents the median. I now have to find the lower quartile. I used this 98. It was the middle. I can't include him in the lower half or the upper half. He's out of play at this point.